Welcome back, everyone, to the freaking Pitre podcast, man. And yeah, last week, dude, was a rough week. I was nauseous, wasn't feeling well. Now I'm finally freaking back to normal, I would say. I don't. My voice is not back yet. Unfortunately, it's still a little off, but for the most part, man, Daddy's back. Daddy is back. I'm a little deflated, unfortunately. I was getting thick on him, man. I was becoming a big meat, a certified big meat, and then food poisoning want to freaking deflate me, and I was looking like a UFC fighter during the weigh-ins, bro. I was was hella dehydrated, and I think I'm still smaller than I once was. So yeah, Daddy's a little deflated, but we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about Superman, Super Meat, bro, with the Super Meat. And this is a movie review. So I watched a lot of movies, of course. Everyone was talking about the Superman movie, so of course I had to go see it and chime in. I think all around, to cut to the chase, it's a good movie. It's a solid movie. James Gunn did pretty good. If you're not familiar with James Gunn's work, like Guardians of the Galaxy is all James Gunn. What's that show? Peacemaker, that is James Gunn as well with John Cena. James Gunn is an amazing director, man. I think when it comes to like lighthearted, witty kind of humor, if you will, I think James Gunn really excels at that. And when it comes to making superhero-related movies, I think he has it down to a T. And he did do a really good job in still keeping some of that lighthearted, funny, comical aspect to the Superman movie, but not making it too much like the Marvel movies, like his previous franchise with Guardians of the Galaxy. Even though they're made by literally the same person, and even though like they're both superhero movies, you still feel the overall difference between the two for the most part. I think even when it comes to some of the camera angles, I can really nerd out when it comes to films and that kind of stuff. But even when it comes to like some of the camera angles, a lot of directors, like Christopher Nolan is a big, he does this a lot. It's a big critique of him. But he uses a lot of the same camera angles from his movies. So like there are shots that are in, the Batman trilogy that you would see in like Timer or whatever the case may be, or Inception. Like a lot of his camera shots, even though they are phenomenal, they're kind of similar. And the lighting, of course, is always the same from movie to movie. It's always like a dark, gritty, low light kind of feel. Wes Anderson, the exact same way. Like he's kind of known for that, his kind of style. I don't even know how to explain it. You have to watch Wes Anderson movies in order for you to understand what I'm saying. Like Grand Budapest Hotel, Moonlight Kingdom, it has that same kind of feel, if you will. So yeah, you still felt some of that in Superman, but it wasn't like a direct copy from Guardians of the Galaxy over into Superman and DC franchise. But talking about specifically the movie, I think casting was pretty good, especially in regard. I think the casting was really well for the heroes. So for Superman, I think that guy, I forgot his name, did a really good job. I don't know any of the actors' names, I'm not going to lie to you. Terrible with names. But Superman, the guy who plays Superman, did a pretty good job. I think one critique that we see online for this Superman is that he wasn't as jacked as Henry fucking Cavill. I'm like, bro, all of these actors do roids. Like whenever an actor needs to get buff for a role, they're doing roids. 100%. They're using some kind of enhanced supplement to get really big in a short period of time. They're not doing it naturally. They have no need to do it naturally. What was the point? What would be the point of doing it naturally? You're in a short period of time where you have to get super jacked. It's not like you're getting tested. It's not like you're a professional athlete and you're getting tested for this shit. You're just going to utilize whatever is given to you to fucking fit that role. It's what they do. And they have to lose. And if they need to lose weight, they take fucking diuretics and all this other shit. Like it's a known thing, basically. So a big critique to his new Superman was he wasn't as jacked as Henry Cavill, which personally, I don't really see a problem with. Of course, in the comic books, 'cause I've read a lot of comic books growing up, so like I can, when I watch Marvel movies, when I watch DC movies, I want to see how accurate they are to like the original source material in the comic books. Me personally, I favor DC comic books way more than Marvel comic books. When DC was on that huge fucking dry spell of just making shitty movies nonstop, I would always tell people like, yo, yes, Marvel has the format down for movies, but comic book wise, DC has by far the better comic books, the better storylines. Like I think DC is far better comic book wise than Marvel. But talking about the comic books, man, everyone's fucking jacked. Like, of course, all the superheroes, they're supposed to be fictional. They're fucking huge. Everyone's fucking jacked. The women all have fucking amazing bodies and huge tits. Like, that's just comic books for you, essentially. They're catering to a specific demographic, and that specific demographic is young males, and that's what they want to see. It is what it is. So, of course, it's going to be hard to find someone that's going to fit that role, to act out that role very well and also look the part, which I think he did fine. You know, he's obviously not a small guy. He's not small whatsoever. He's just not as big as fucking Henry Cavill. But I think looks-wise, he fit the part. I think he did a really good job acting as Superman. And one thing that people really critiqued for Superman was that he felt way too vulnerable. You know, that he wasn't as, you know, strong as the Henry Cavill Superman. The Henry Cavill Superman was basically impervious to fucking everything. Like, that was kind of his portrayal of Superman, of like this freaking invulnerable person, essentially. And you did not see that with this Superman, James Gunn version of Superman, which personally I like. And the people who complain about it, you just never read the comic books, straight up. Because Superman in the comic books gets his ass handed to him all the time. You know, yes, he is extremely powerful, and, you know, that's not understated whatsoever from the comic books. Like, he is, you know, when he comes about, the tide of the battle changes 100%, no matter who they're fighting, you know. Everyone just suddenly has hope when he's around. Just because of who he is, of course, the power that he has as well. So, yes, he is kind of all-powerful in the comic books, but he still gets his ass handed to him all the time. There's still supervillains out there that can, you know, beat the shit out of him. And you saw that a lot within this movie. Not only that, if you look at the credits in the beginning of the movie, because there's like a rollout of credits that says, like, you know, Superman and, you know, 300 years ago, metahumans came to the Earth, and then, you know, 30 years ago, a baby came from Krypton, and, you know, 27 years ago, he revealed that he was Superman, and basically he's only been like Superman for 3 years, or, you know, he's only been a superhero for 3 years. He's still getting the hang of shit, basically, you know? So, yeah, people were complaining that he was getting his ass whooped. I didn't care about that. I think that, one, it's actually a good thing that James Gunn did that, because when it comes to Superman, the biggest challenge is trying to show his humanity. Because all Superman's whole thing, his whole shtick is that, you know, even though he is this kind of all-powerful being that came from another planet, that he is still human at the end of the day. He still has human values. He still sees himself basically as human. And that was a big talking point within the movie as well. But it's hard to portray that with a being that's fucking impervious to everything, like the Henry Cavill Superman. You know, it's hard to see that, to feel his humanity when this motherfucker could just do anything, essentially. And I kind of felt that way when watching those older Superman movies, in that, you know, he just feels larger than life. You can't really connect with him. Rather than this Superman, you can connect with him more, because you can see his shortcomings. You can see his character flaws. You can see his weaknesses. So people complain about it. I say, yo, just fucking read a comic book and you'll see that Superman gets his ass handed to all the time. But I think they did a really good job of portraying the humanity in Superman, which was a big talking point in this movie, because Superman the whole time was just like, yo, yeah, I came from another planet or whatever, but like, I'm human, I feel human. My parents are human. I just want to help humanity essentially and uplift humanity to the best that I can and do good things. So yeah, I think the casting for Superman was really well. The casting for Mr. Terrific, I think they did a really good job introducing some of those more niche characters. The biggest issue with DC up until this point was the introduction of characters. They did a really, really sloppy job trying to introduce like the broader sphere, which they were doing so in competition with Marvel. Because when these DC movies first started coming out, like the first Superman, Batman versus Superman, Wonder Woman, I forgot the Justice League movie essentially. They were trying to compete their hardest with Marvel while Marvel was so far superior and in our top. Like they were dominating that hero genre like by a fucking country mile. No one could compete with them. They were, all the movies of that time were selling out. This is during like Avengers, leading up to Avengers Endgame. Like everyone loved the Marvel movies. It wasn't the way it was now in phase 4, whatever fucking phase we're on right now. I'd stop counting. I really don't care anymore. I'm not going to lie. But they were trying so hard to compete with Marvel where they tried to kind of copy and paste the Marvel format as far as like the feel of the movies, trying to roll out the Justice League movie as quickly as possible, not really building out those characters. That's the one thing that Marvel did extremely well. They build out the characters. Each individual character, for the most part, had their own movie, a series of movies. But not only that, if they didn't have their own movies, they were featured in the other characters' movies. Like, look at Black Widow. Black Widow didn't get her own feature-length movie until the end of Endgame, after Endgame, essentially. But she was featured in fucking every single Marvel movie beforehand. Basically every single Marvel movie beforehand, to some degree. So a lot of the side characters, they got love, they got introductions. We grew to know and love them. And when it comes to DC, they did that way too fast. It was very sloppy. They rushed it. It was clear they were trying to compete and it wasn't working. And they went the traditional route in bringing in like the most famous characters. So obviously Superman, Batman, I think initially did a really good job of Wonder Woman, even though Gal Gadot's a shitty actress. Just saying, she's beautiful, but she's a terrible actress. But that first Wonder Woman movie is actually pretty good. Aquaman. So those are like the big 4 when it comes to superheroes in DC. Like those are basically 4 of like the 5 or 6 biggest superheroes in DC. So naturally they're going to roll those out first. So I like that for this kind of reboot that they're doing. They're not going with the traditional big name superheroes. They went with Mr. Terrific, which in the comic books, man, I've probably seen Mr. Terrific like a handful of times. I completely forgot about that character, to be entirely honest with you. But he stole the show. He did a really good job. And his character, of course, is just being super fucking smart, which definitely portrayed in that. But he had a lot of like dry humor, sarcasm too, which you don't really see from the comic book. So I think that was a really good addition to Mr. Terrific. Even with the Green Lantern, man, they could have went with Hal Jordan. The Green Lantern is like, when it comes to comic books, bro, there's so many fucking characters, and even within the individual characters, there's additional characters, and Green Lantern is a good example of that. So even for the Green Lantern, there's like 5 Green Lanterns. So you have Hal Jordan, you have Kyle Rayner, you have, I was going to say a Spanish accent for no reason. God, the fucking Green Lantern that's in this movie, I forgot his name. He was like the backup Green Lantern. And then you have the black guy. I forgot his name too. That's another Green Lantern. But basically, this Green Lantern that was in the movie, he was insufferable. He was a pain in the ass, ugly as fuck, terrible haircut. And I think they did a really good job specifically with that Green Lantern, because in the comic books, he kind of is like that too. He's insufferable. He sucks. Like his Green Lantern, I'm blanking out on the specific name of that Green Lantern, but in the comic books, like, he was the backup Green Lantern. Like Hal Jordan was the original Green Lantern, the Green Lantern everyone knows and loves. That guy was the backup. And then he became the backup to the backup. And then he ended up dying or disappearing, and then Hal Jordan dates his girlfriend, and like this motherfucker just couldn't get shit right, essentially, and he's just like a pain in the ass to everyone in the comic books. So they did a really good job portraying that. They introduced Hawkgirl, which is really cool. I'm surprised they introduced Hawkgirl over Hawkman, which those two just basically go hand in hand. They're very similar. They're gonna end up rolling out Hawkman in the future, obviously, but they did a really good job, I think, overall for casting for the superheroes and introducing more niche superheroes, if you will. The side characters like Lois Lane, I gotta be honest, man, like when it comes to a lot of, this can sound sexist, but it's the truth. When it comes to a lot of Hollywood actresses nowadays and who is getting these lead roles, Harvey Weinstein will have a fucking heart attack if he sees some of the actors if he had lays eyes on some of the actresses that are getting these lead roles. And of course, they're not ugly by any means, but during the Harvey Weinstein era, he was running Hollywood. You basically had to look like a model in order for you to be in the movie. A good example of that is like Scarlett Johansson, Lucy Liu. You have to be stunning in order to be in movies. You can't just be a good actress. Like Olivia Wilde, Jessica Biel. You had to be beautiful. And a lot of women that are getting the roles nowadays, they don't have that same standard anymore. Not to say that they're necessarily ugly, because they're not, of course. Who am I to speak? But they're not physically as attractive as they once were. And I think a lot of the male audience is kind of complaining about it. But I'm not going to lie, man, it doesn't bother me as much. I just find it funny because look at the guy actors. You have some really fucking handsome guy actors like, Hugh Jackman and other people. But then you have motherfuckers like Adam Sandler, who looks like my dad. Literally. You have my fucking dad on the big screen, and every single Adam Sandler movie ends up with the most attractive fucking woman possible, So it's like, I don't complain. I don't see the complaints as much. I think what I want to see the most is, are you a good actor? Are you? Because it sucks seeing someone who, yes, it is very physically beautiful, but they can't act for shit. Gal Gadot being one of them. And again, I'm just speaking as a spectator of someone who enjoys cinema. I can't act for shit either. Then again, I am not an actor, so I get a pass. But it sucks seeing someone who is very physically beautiful but can't act for shit, who ends up just ruining the movie, essentially. But yeah, a lot of dudes are complaining about it. There's a lot of complaints online as far as some of the women who are getting these lead roles. I'm like, yo, imagine the women. They want to fucking see Adam Sandler. They want to see my dad in the screen. They don't want to see that shit. So I just find it funny. But the side characters, I think overall did pretty good as well. Lois Lane, I forgot the dude's name, who was the fucking other journalist for it's not the Daily Bugle. Daily Bugle is Marvel. Daily Planet, I forgot the fucking whatever bullshit newspaper that Superman works for. Yeah, so I think all the side characters ultimately did a good job. It was a solid film. I think the premise of the film was the one thing that really caught people's eyes as far as the comparison between what's happening with Gaza and Israel versus what's happening in the movie. And this is just to clear up the air, man. Listen, the country of Baravia, it's in DC comic books. DC comic books is older than Marvel comic books. The country of Baravia has been comically evil in DC comic books the entire time. Not only that, the country of Baravia was introduced in DC comic books in 1939 or 1938, one or the other. So almost 100 years ago. Israel was formed 1945, 1946. So Baravia came before Israel. So to say that, people are saying, oh, they made up a country to make the parallel, that's not true at all. I think where there is a parallel is, of course, the location of where basically the genocide of the war is happening in the movie is primarily a very desert location. It looks very Middle Eastern, if you will. So that's one place to draw the parallel. I don't know where exactly Barovia is located within the DC universe or the DC world. And of course, like the parallels between a very technologically advanced company that's backed by the US versus like fucking people throwing rocks and not having anything. So of course you can draw that parallel there too, man. I would say this, listen, the people that are saying, yo, it's parallels, boycott the movie, that kind of stuff, you just feel guilty at the end of the day. Your guilt is just being portrayed in your or your resentment towards the movie, your distaste for the conflict of the movie. That's all that's happening. You know it's basically wrong what's being done over there, and you see the parallels, and now you're upset because it's pulling at you. It's saying it's literally showing you in face in movie like, yo, this is exactly what's happening over there, and like you guys are feeling bad. Essentially, you're seeing a one-to-one parallel, and now that's unrelated to the exact issue that's occurring over there, and now you feel bad about it, or now you're angry about it. So that's what I would say there. It wasn't a created country out of nowhere. It's literally in DC comic books. You guys are just butthurt about it, essentially. Get over it. Did James Gunn possibly like force some parallels into the movie? Probably. I wouldn't be surprised to make the movie kind of like hit home, which would be a really good. Honestly, it's a really good marketing strategy and really good strategy to get people to watch the movie and get buzz behind the movie. So if he did do that purposely, I'd say kudos, because it definitely worked in its intended way. Excuse me. So the premise of the movie was really great. Superman kind of wrestling with the fact that he is an immigrant, and people turning on him because he's an immigrant with the immigration issue that's occurring in this country right now, which came out just in time. To develop these movies, it takes years. It takes multiple years. This movie is probably in development for like 3 years. So yes, there was an issue with immigration 3 years ago, but it's nowhere near the kind of issue that we're facing as far as right now. So, or like the scope of it. So I think perfect timing for release there as well. And of course, the conflict in the Middle East has been happening for the past 3 years. So there could have been some parallels drawn, which if it were, perfect time for release. And I do think that the leader of Barovia, they did make him look super Jewish. I'm not gonna lie. Like, he had like the classically, stereotypical big nose, that kind of stuff. So maybe I think they drew parallels as far as the leader there, or could have. But I just found that funny once I saw the leader on the big screen. Like, damn, like they maybe were not trying to pull any punches here. Just found it funny. But yeah, I think it was a good showcase in that Superman, he just wants to do good at the end of the day. He's just more of a gentle human being than anything else. He truly just wants to make the world a better place. And when he saw that there is like a clear injustice in the world where a technologically superior country is basically trying to commit a genocide and eradicate an entirely smaller country, he kind of sprung into action, So I do think in the comic books he would have done the exact same thing. He has done the exact same thing on other occasions. Literally on other occasions he has done this. So it's not something that's necessarily new to Superman that he's doing for the first time. He's literally done this in the comic book source material. So anyone that's saying Superman wouldn't have done that is wrong. I think a lot of people are basing their opinion on Superman or on DC from the Snyderverse. the Snyderverse. They're basing it from the Snyderverse. They're basing it of those previous DC movies, which were all fucking terrible. So don't base your perception of Superman, your perception of what the character should be from the previous movies. You should be basing it on the source material. And I would say this. I think this Superman movie is more relatable to the original source material than the Snyderverse. I would say that for a fact, because of course comic books, there at times, depending on the storyline, depending on the character, can be gritty. But when it comes to the character of Superman, Superman is very comical. He's very like, I'm trying to find the exact right wording in my brain to kind of describe it, but he's not as serious as someone like Batman, you know? So I think it being more whimsical, the movie being more whimsical in comparison to like some of the other Superman movies in the past, I think it's fine. I think this Superman movie more closely relates to like the Christopher Reeve Superman movies in the past from like, 40, 50 years ago. Like this more aligns there than it does with the Snyderverse Superman. So I think overall it was a really good film. I think this is definitely the best DC film for the new reboot that they're doing, and definitely best DC film compared to all the other DC films, for the exception of the Batman movies. The Batman movies, not the George Clooney ones, but the Batman movies from Christopher Nolan, the new Batman movie has been really good. I think they do have to learn from Marvel's shortcomings and what Marvel did well. I think they need to do a slow rollout of the niche characters, because we have multiple movies of Aquaman, Wonder Woman. I think don't touch those characters for now. Unless you want to reintroduce them, which I don't think would make sense. I know it's very easy to reintroduce a familiar face because people know it already, and you could just try to carry the storyline into the new universe, but I think that's going to cause more problems than good. I think don't touch those superheroes. Aquaman, Wonder Woman, don't reintroduce them as of yet, because I think it's gonna, people are going to naturally bring in everything from the Snyderverse in their head to the new universe. So all the shortcomings from the Snyderverse are naturally going to kind of tie it in and bring it into the new universe and have those expectations already set, because they're seeing those familiar faces. So I wouldn't touch them, man. I'll stay as far away from them as humanly possible and start to introduce new, fresh faces. That's one thing that DC has a huge problem with, is that they constantly do the reboots of two characters. They constantly do reboots of Superman, and they constantly do reboots of Batman. Non-stop. It's like we have a new Batman, new Superman every like 5 to 10 years. And you have a plethora of other superheroes that have never been introduced in cinema before. Probably like a few of them introduced into like the DC shows, but none of them introduced in cinema before. And you're recycling the same two superheroes over and over and over again, to the point where like I wasn't going to see the new Superman movie unless I saw all the talk online. If the talk online was not there and people were just saying it was mid, I wouldn't have went to go see the Superman movie. Because why? There's been like so many different Superman movies over the past couple of years. Like over my lifetime, I've seen 4 Supermans. And it's a reboot. It's not like it's not anything building on top of each other. It's like scrapping the whole universe and redoing it again. Like you can only do that so many times that people get tired of it over a short course, over a short period of time. So I would say stay away from those traditional, no, they're not even traditional, but traditional, or the characters that we are most familiar with DC, and start introducing more of the niche characters. Like fucking Element Man is a super niche character in DC, and I like that they introduced them. I thought they were going to possibly go with like Martian Manhunter before, who's another big DC superhero before, introducing someone like Element Man. Like, it's cool that they introduced Hawkeye. I think they should really introduce Hawkman. They probably didn't introduce Hawkman because he was in the movie with The Rock. I forgot Shazam's main nemesis. I'm blanking out on his name right now. It is what it is, but we know that. The only thing that movie did right was, I was going to say Doctor Strange as Marvel. It's Dr. Fate, or forgot his fucking name. Sorry, dude. I'm forgetting names left and right now. I'm so sorry. But basically, DC's version of Doctor Strange. He was around before Doctor Strange anyway. So Doctor Strange is fucking Marvel's version of that character. But I think they do a really good job with that character, which they should try to reintroduce into the new James Gunn DC universe. I saw that Peacemaker made an appearance, which I think he fits really well into this DC universe. Start introducing more of these niche characters, man. Make it more exciting. Give more new faces and not trying to reintroduce familiar faces or reboot existing or previous characters. I think one thing they're going to run into trouble with is ultimately Batman. Batman, he's naturally a very gritty character. He's a very dark character, He's different kind of from the rest of the DC universe in a way. And Batman as a character is really different from, I think, what James Gunn can really accurately portray. Because when you look at the best Batman movies are by far the Christopher Nolan movies, which had no ties to any other, broader universes. But the movies are so good because it's gritty, it's for adults. It's not necessarily for kids, it has a very, very dark storyline. You see a lot of murder and death in the movies, a lot of it. And that's the character of Batman, He's naturally dark and gritty. It's going to be hard to kind of introduce a character like that into more of a whimsical universe. Not only that, but we already have a Batman in Robert Pattinson. So introducing that Batman into this new universe, I just don't see it fitting. I don't see it accurately fitting. I'm going to be honest with you. And even outside of Batman, like some of Batman's supervillains, like the Penguin, which the Penguin show is fucking phenomenal. If you haven't watched it yet, please go watch it. It's really, really good. But introducing that character into this whimsical kind of DC universe, I don't think is going to really fit unless you have to kind of change the tone of the entire movie in order to do that. Which you can do that for individual characters. So maybe Superman movies are a little more whimsical, Batman movies are a little more gritty, and when you combine the two and both characters are in one movie, maybe it's in the middle, So who knows? They're the fucking experts here. Let's see if they can pull it off. But I think that they're going to run into a problem there. I think another issue they're going to run into a problem too is DC's biggest issue, which Marvel did a really good job at balancing the villains. So each major superhero has some pretty good villains. I think by far Spider-Man has like the best villain set. But Captain America has some good villains. Thor has a few good villains. Iron Man has some decent villains. Then you have like the X-Men's villains, and you have Fantastic Four's villains. When it comes to DC, the best villains, either Superman has them or Batman has them. Batman has the most. Like his villain set is fucking phenomenal. It's the best villain set in all of superhero genre, whether it be DC or Marvel, hands down. But second in the DC universe, we go to Superman. But when you look at the villain set for every other superhero, is not as good. I'm going to be honest with you. There's a few DC superheroes that have like some pretty good villains, but for the most part, they're not that good. Like, look at Flash, for example. Every single Flash villain is another speedster. You have fucking Reverse Flash, Black Flash, Gay Flash. Like, it's just different Flashes. It's different fast motherfuckers. Like, it's basically all there is to offer. So it can get really boring, especially on a big screen. That's why for the second for the first Flash movie, they introduced Zod again, who's a freaking Superman villain, They even introduced like a proper Flash villain at that. But yeah, when it comes to the DC superheroes, the broader DC superhero universe, a lot of the villains are not that great for the other superheroes. I'm going to be honest. So I think that's a point of possible contention. I think they're going to have to pull, some of the bigger DC supervillains or some of the supervillains that, because supervillains tend to just like fight basically their hero, but there's a few DC supervillains that fight multiple heroes, like Slade, for instance, Deathstroke. Like, he fights multiple DC superheroes. He whips multiple DC superheroes' ass. Yes, he's primarily Batman's villain, but you can pull I think that would be a really good starting point for DC as far as like the first villain that the Justice League collectively fights, because there's multiple comic books where like Slade whips everyone's ass. He beats like fucking 8 superheroes at a time because the dude is just fucking beyond smart. He's just a beautiful tactician. So let's see what they do with it, man. I think definitely the hopes are high for DC fans for cinema. It's been bad for so long, so let's see, if they can continue this and make things better. I think overall it's going to be way better than the Snyder Universe, but we'll see. If you haven't seen the movie, I definitely suggest watching it. And yeah, that's this week's episode, and have a good one, guys.